At the thought of hearing Vijay Krishna Prabhu.
Jai, Vijay Krishna Prabhu, are you there? We'll hear from Panchatattva Prabhu.
You want me to do the opening kirtan?
Yes, please, Prabhu.
Of
Please,
course,
please.
right away. Just tell me if you can hear my mridanga.
Co-host, please.
Yes.
Can you hear my mridanga?
I heard it then. I'm not sure if it will continue to be heard. If you have your settings to original sound, we'll continue to hear you.
Wait. Oh my God.
But it sounded good so far, so yeah, you're welcome to.
So again, just one more test.
I can hear it, yes.
Okay, so here it goes. Thank you very much. You're most kind for the invitation. Radha Das Prabhu.
That's Panchatattva Prabhu's suggestion. But yes, I will
Yes,
take.
it was Panchatattva Das Prabhu's suggestion. Thank you very much, Panchatattva Das Prabhu, for your most mirthful invitation. You're most kind. So here it goes. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And Premadwani prayers, please.
Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Stotra Shata Shishva Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Stotra Shata Shishva Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nanta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se ko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. All glories to Samal devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Samal devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Samal devotees, Hare Krishna. Nitai Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Welcome, my dear devotees. We're going to continue our reading. We are on text 25. And I know some of the devotees in this gathering, but because perhaps we're not all completely familiar with each other, I just wanted to suggest that maybe those who are available or want to read at some point, maybe you can just let that be known now. I don't know if you can put in the text message that you're available, or otherwise sometimes as we go through the verses we send out a request for someone to read, and we don't know who will respond to it. So if you like, all right. Gurudas Prabhu is mentioning, all right, yeah, thank you. Yeah, a little comment just to let us know you're available is very helpful. I'll read the first couple of verses just because there's not too much commentary. It's the hellish sufferings, these next 3 verses. So I'll just read a couple, and then we'll pass it down the chain, and I'd love to hear all of your thoughts. And thank you all so much for being here. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I see, Guru Maharaj, you just joined. Please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you for being present with us.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
All right, text 25. With the Sanskrit. Adipanam svagatranam veshtayat volmukadhibihi atmamang sadhanam kvapi svakritam paratopiva. He is placed in the midst of burning pieces of wood, and his limbs are set on fire. In some cases, he is made to eat his own flesh, or have it eaten by others. Purport. From this verse through the next 3 verses, the description of punishment will be narrated. The first description is that the criminal has to eat his own flesh, burning with fire, or allow others like himself who are present there to eat. In the last great war, people in concentration camps sometimes ate their own stool. So there is no wonder that in the Yamasadhana, the abode of Yamaraj, one who had a very enjoyable life eating others' flesh has to eat his own flesh. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Gurudas Jayadvaita Swami Namani. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jutapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagra Jatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamsha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosute Tapta Kanchan Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Just a couple brief words. I think last class, I believe Guru Maharaj, you mentioned that there are people who are suffering in the middle of a desert, who don't have any water to drink within our experience in this world. So the torture of the living entity as he's dragged to the Yamasadhana is not outside necessarily of our experience in this world. And similarly, Srila Prabhupada is mentioning in this purport that in this lifetime, we're seeing that one has a very enjoyable life eating others' flesh. So it's not so surprising that one would be forced to be in that position on the receiving end, having his own flesh eaten. Quite horrific, of course, that one would be forced to eat one's own flesh. But this experience is there. We see flesh is being eaten, one's own or someone else's. It's abominable. It's unimaginable for someone who's, at least for me, I've never had flesh, so I don't have anything to compare it to. But even for those who have eaten meat, to eat one's own flesh is quite horrific, but a suitable punishment for one who's enjoyed in that way. yeah, I don't think I'm going to say more. I'll open it up to all of you, or Guru Maharaj, if you have something more to say on this particular verse, please.
Only that there was a book published of a concentration camp memoir in which a person was so hungry that he was eating his own flesh. So it's not. So it's also within that realm of experienced reality in this world. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, the tortures in the concentration camp, unimaginable. Srila Prabhupada's mentioning that the desperation one must feel to eat one's own stool. How horrific. And yet we turn a blind eye to these sort of sufferings, that it'll happen to somebody else, or the desire to enjoy material nature is so strong that one can see the slaughter happening to everyone in the line before him, but think, I'm safe, or it's, push it out of your mind, this is coming later. But maybe we'll just run down the line in the chat, starting with Guru Das Prabhu, and we can just continue from there for those who have volunteered to read. Perhaps, Prabhuji, you can read text 26 for us, and go until you have a purport or some commentary, and then we can move on. I believe Vijay Krishna Prabhu volunteered, or Panchatattva Prabhu, and then Vijay Krishna Prabhu, if that sounds all right. Whenever you're ready, Guru Das Prabhu.
For these verses, I'm never sure if I'm quite ready, but I will do my best. My obeisances to my Guru Maharaj and to Jayadvaita Swami and to the Vaishnavas present, and to, of course, to Srila Prabhupada. Text 26. Jivatas tantra bujara svagrid rar yamasadane sarpa vikchikadam sadyar dasadbishchatmavaishasam. Translation: his entrails are pulled out by the hounds and vultures of hell, even though he is still alive to see it, and he is subjected to torment by serpents, scorpions, gnats, and other creatures that bite him. 627. Quintanam chavayavasho gajadibyo vidapanam patanam giri shringebyo rotanam chambugartayo. Next, his limbs are lopped off and torn asunder by elephants. He is hurled down from hilltops, and he is also held captive either in the water or in a cave. Text 28.
If I can interject something, this having one's entrails pulled out is another torture that happens in this world. You may have heard the term drawn and quartered. It was a particular punishment reserved especially for treason in Great Britain even, and perhaps other places. And drawn means having one's entrails, one's intestines pulled out while one was still alive to see it. So this again is one of those tortures that even in this world have been seen.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Carry on.
Text 28. Yas tamishranta tamishra rauravadyas chayatanaha bhungte naro vanariva mita sangena nirmitaha. Translation: men and women whose lives were built upon indulgence in illicit sex life are put into many kinds of miserable conditions in the hells known as Tamisra, Andatamisra, and Rorava. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Materialistic life is based on sex life. The existence of all the materialistic people who are undergoing severe tribulation in the struggle for existence based on sex. Therefore, in the Vedic civilization, sex life is allowed only in a restricted way. It is for the married couple and only for begetting children. But when sex life is indulged in for sense gratification illegally and illicitly, both the man and the woman await severe punishment in this world or after death. In this world also, they are punished by virulent diseases like syphilis and gonorrhea. And in the next life, as we see in this passage of Srimad Bhagavatam, they're put into different kinds of hellish conditions to suffer. In Bhagavad Gita, first chapter, illicit sex is also very much condemned, and it is said that one who produces children by illicit sex life is sent to hell. It is confirmed here in the Bhagavatam that such offenders are put into hellish conditions of life in Tamishra, Andatamishra, and Rorava.
Sankaro narakayaiva kulagnanam kulasyacha. Those who create Varnasankara, offspring by illicit sex, create hellish life for themselves and others. Yeah, first chapter. Hare Krishna.
Guru Dasper, do you have anything you'd like to say on that verse?
Like other verses we've been reading, it's pretty self-explanatory. I would add only that that the conditioned soul being entrapped by his own sinful activities is trapped in the mentality of this is my body, that I am this body, and that's why he must endure all of these punishments, because he's so attached to the false conception of his being his body. He has no chance of escape at that point. And these hellish conditions, which are unimaginable, he has to go through them. And it's, of course, a warning in the biggest possible terms, 10-foot, 50-foot letters. You know, if this is something that you've been doing, reader, you must stop immediately, or even thinking about it. Yeah, our lives should be shaken, our conditioned material lives, if we read up to this point, or we open the book to this point and read that, it's meant to shake the conditioned soul's entire consciousness. Unfortunately, some people read it and take it as mythology. but consistent reading of Prabhupada's books will dispel that conception. Regular reading in the association of Vaishnavas, that those conceptions of that doesn't apply to me, or that's mythology, or eventually we realize how sinful we are even to come into this material world. What to speak of the culture I was so unfortunately raised in to desire. That was like every other conditioned soul, I imagined that was the highest thing to achieve, a sex life with a beautiful woman. Anyway, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Guru Das Prabhu. You brought to mind, I like that you mentioned this is a cautionary tale. You know, you see these and alarm bells should go off. I know my mother told me that when she was in Gurukul, very little, they would pick up Bhagavatam and they'd flip to the Mohini Morti pastime for some sort of, you know, erotica or something. You know, as little kids, you read it and sort of, you know, giggle about it or laugh. And I remember when I was a little kid, the canto we'd flip to was the 5th canto. My friends and I would flip it open and read about these hellish tortures and sort of laugh with each other that, whoa, that's, you know, that's pretty far out. But it always seemed to apply to somebody else and not to us. And so it is nice to bring it down to earth and recognize that, you know, this is happening. So yeah, thank you for that comment. I did see, before I go to the comments, I wanted to prioritize those who put hands up. I see the hands have been lowered. Panchatattva Prabhu and Shiv Kumar Prabhu, I'm not sure if you've both lost your comments or no longer are applicable, but if you would like to comment, please feel free to before we go to comments.
Just one thing, you know, there's mention here of venereal diseases, and as a, you know, current topic in the United States, venereal disease is rampant. It's on the rise, and it's interesting. It almost seems like material nature. Well, it doesn't seem like it. It does. Material nature reacts with withholding opulences, withholding natural resources, and so forth, but also manifesting, you know, we see through the process of the interaction of the 3 modes of material nature, the manifestation of different reactions for people's sinful activities. And right now, there's one particular disease, syphilis, which normally manifests effects on the brain and on the vision and so forth late stages of the disease, but they're seeing it early on now in people who are contracting this disease. So there's like a matching severity with the severity of the offense. You know, it's kind of like criminal meet your punishment. This is going on in the material world. And the other thing I was thinking about in terms of these descriptions is, first of all, they're not allegorical. And secondly, because we've all been passing through material bodies one after another, and more than likely, almost definitely, have had previous lifetimes as in this human form of life, and have more than likely committed sinful activities that entitled us to visit these regions, we have experienced these things somewhere in the past. So what to speak of seeing evidence for them in this day and age on this planet? We've been there. We've done that. And it can actually kindle feelings of compassion for others, because we've been there. We've been through that. We don't want to see other people go through that. We have to help people become Krishna conscious to avoid these terrible outcomes and all this suffering in material life. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, not allegorical. And we see the Tulsi Toshini Devi's question. We'll revisit this whole topic. Maybe we'll revisit in the next verse. She mentioned that could it be understood that hell and paradise can be manifested on this earth? So we'll hold off on that topic till the next verse. The next comment we have from Priyanka Devi. Hare Krishna Maharaj, does prostitution come under illicit relationships? If yes, then how do we find its mention in Krishna Lila as a normal practice?
Yes, it's certainly illicit sex. Prabhupada specifies earlier in the purport that sex is only for the married couple and only for having children. So prostitution is certainly outside that. But these things are going on in Dwarka in the transcendental world. So Dwarka is keeping up the appearance of a metropolitan city. If you were to replicate New York in the spiritual world, it would have to have Times Square, it would have to have prostitutes and so many things. But they're in the spiritual world, they're devoid of material characteristics. They're essentially, what would you say, almost for decoration, or to present the picture of a complete city. But we don't find that the spiritual world is infected in any way by sinful activities and sinful reactions.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. And from Saraswati Devi, we have pranams. This is sort of mirroring Panchatattva Prabhu's mention that, we've had these experiences before. We find sometimes, this is Saraswati Devi's, we find sometimes people have certain phobias like fear of heights, darkness, deep water, insects, etc., with no discernible reason for that fear, which could be due to faint memories of punishment experienced in hell that somehow left scars in their next life. And
in the cases of the reincarnation type studied by the parapsychologist Ian Stevenson, that is, cases of children who appear to remember previous lives, there are many cases of in which phobias that the child has correspond to, in some way, to the means of death of the previous person, the person whose life the child seems to remember. So that supports the notion that you're bringing up, that there can be some faint or even vivid memory of suffering in a previous life. And we know more generally from what Prabhupada's taught that in the mind there are layers and layers and layers and layers of memories from previous lives, good memories, bad memories, all floating around in there. So, and there's karma from millions and millions of lifetimes floating around in there or attached to this, to our material existence. So, yes, all sorts of whatever appears in our life has some previous cause. It's not that things just happen, and it's not that things have only a physiological cause, but there are causes that go back for lifetimes and lifetimes.
Thank you. And from Ross, Hare Krishna Maharaj, if a person engaged in any of these sinful activities before knowledge of their consequences, if anyone engaged before knowledge of their consequences, and then takes to devotional service, is there anything that such a devotee should consider as they try to advance in Krishna consciousness?
You're just not to come out of what is that? One is freed from yesham tantakatam papam jananam punyakarmanam. One is freed from the results of past activities by devotional service, but one should be determined not to commit sinful activities again. Therefore, that promise at the time of initiation, no intoxicants, no gambling, no meat eating, no illicit sex, we should follow strictly.
Thank you. And one last comment from Saraswati Devi, and then Panchatattva Prabhu will have you read text 29 after. We have a couple more comments. Saraswati Devi says, also, there are some people who readily abstain from sex, but are still very materialistic too. So not sure then how their entire material existence is based on sex.
Well, one thing is, from previous lifetimes, one has those materialistic tendencies. So previous sex. And also, I would say, I suppose, if you think they're materialistic, you just to try to imagine how materialistic they'd be if they were having sex. If they were having sex. That, and it's, of course, a general statement. And we see it in practical terms, that materialists are driven or impelled by sex. So many of their activities, well, even an ordinary household is maintained in consequence of sex. By sex, when man and woman become attracted, then they get a home and children and expenses. So all these expenses are consequences of sex, and the consequence of all that, those expenses is hard work to maintain, and in so many other ways, these troubles, leave aside syphilis and the more grievous things. We're reminded in the previous comment that the famous artist Raphael died during the Renaissance of syphilis at 37. But leave aside those things, just the ordinary miserable life, or the ordinary miseries of life, are in general can be traced to sex attachment, sex indulgence. It's not just a sort of a theoretical or what's the word, Victorian sort of notion, but on careful examination, we see. I remember meeting one man on a train platform, maybe a subway platform. He was totally down and out, and he was telling his story of how his wife had divorced him. And he was just like a sort of working class guy. And he had all the miseries of having to work so hard to support a family that he no longer had. He had children and all of that, but still had to work so hard to support them. But he had none of the happiness of family life. None of the happiness, and that's common these days. We divorce, and then the man still has to work to support his family, and he gets none of the happiness that might be associated with having a family. The misery without the happiness, or the happiness with the misery that goes with it, either way.
Thank you. If it's all right, I think I'll skip your question, Praveen Krishna Prabhu, because it mirrors Saraswati Devi's question last class that Guru Maharaj answered at the end. If you have some further details on that question, or still want to answer it again, please mention in the comments. Otherwise, Panchatattva Prabhu, if you can read text 29.
Sure. Text 29. Atraiva naraka svarga itimata prachakshate. Excuse me. Itimata prachakshate yayatana vai narakyas ta ihapyupalakshitaha. Lord Kapila continued, my dear mother, it is sometimes said that we experience hell or heaven on this planet, for hellish punishments are sometimes visible on this planet also. Purport. Sometimes unbelievers do not accept these statements of Scripture regarding hell. They disregard such authorized descriptions. Lord Kapila therefore confirms them by saying that these hellish conditions are also visible on this planet. It is not that they are only on the planet where Yamaraj lives. On the planet of Yamaraj, the sinful man is given the chance to practice living in the hellish conditions which he will have to endure in the next life. And then he's given a chance to take birth on another planet to continue his hellish life. For example, if a man to be punished to remain in hell, if a man is to be punished to remain in hell and eat stool and urine, then first of all he practices such habits on the planet of Yamaraj. And then he is given a particular type of body, that of a hog, so that he can eat stool and think that he's enjoying life. It is stated previously that in any hellish condition, the conditioned soul thinks he's happy. Otherwise, it would not be possible for him to suffer hellish life. Om Jnana Timaranda Shagananjana Sarakaya Chakshu Maritanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I'm reminded here of the Bhagavatam's description of the child in the womb, that what a condition to be packed up in the womb of the mother and bitten by worms, parasites, and so forth within the body, germs and so forth, and a condition that in a more mature stage of development would be impossible for the living entity to endure. Yet, because of its particular stage of development and its particular state of consciousness, the living entity in the womb is able to somehow or other endure that excruciating discomfort. So an interesting point made here in the purport is that hellish suffering that is endured in Yamaraj's abode is carried on. It's like prep school for the sinful. You get trained up for your activities in your next body, and when when you get your diploma, you go to your next body and think that everything is just fine. I've got my particular body, my particular set of eatables, my particular activities, and sense activities, and these are what I want and what I need. They're good enough for me. And of course, the restrictive effects of tamas, in particular, and rajas, are there also in that peculiar binding effect, keeping the consciousness of the living entity so restricted that he doesn't really think that there's something more than this. We see that, unfortunately, even in the human form of life, and therefore it's by the mercy of the Lord's pure representatives, the pure devotees, that even in this human form, people are so conditioned that they need a jolt, they need a strong message. They, meaning we, need the strong message, strong instruction from the spiritual master, and also tactful and so forth. But we have to hear this message, and therefore, when we read this section of third canto of Bhagavatam or the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we shouldn't just gloss it over, because it's a very important section, actually, of this great work, because it's showing us the adverse situations of material life, and in reinforcing the fact that this trajectory of material activity and material enjoyment is not the one meant for the sane being. It's one meant for those who are crazy. Hare Krishna.
Do you have any thoughts, or Guru Maharaj, on the last line of the purport? I'm having a little trouble understanding how one needs to be able to enjoy hellish conditions to be able to suffer the hellish planets. Any thoughts? I didn't find anything in Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on that. I'm sorry, go ahead, Prabhu.
Yeah, Guru Maharaj, would you please make a comment?
You're muted, Guru Maharaj.
Go ahead, Panchatattva Prabhu.
Okay. Well, it seems pretty. See if I've understood your question. You're saying it seems unlikely that someone would be enjoying hellish suffering or thinking that this
Uh,
is pleasurable.
I just don't understand the last two sentences. That the conditioned soul thinks he's happy in hellish conditions. Otherwise, it would not be possible for him to suffer hellish life. I just feel like you could be unhappy in hellish conditions and also suffer hellish life. But maybe the point, and you can further this. Maybe the point is that if you're unhappy in hellish conditions, you'll undergo some sort of reformatory. You'll try to get out of it. Whereas you have to think you're happy in hellish conditions for you to have to go and suffer hellish life to be reformed, to recognize that this is not an enjoyable situation. That's kind of what I took from it, but I don't want to speculate. Basically, Srila Prabhupada's statement is just that the soul thinks he's happy in a hellish condition. Otherwise, it's not possible for him to suffer hellish life. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around that statement, whether it's a reformatory thing, that one needs to be disabused of the notion that hellish conditions are enjoyable, or if there's something I'm missing there.
Yeah, I think you more or less answered your own question, but yeah, there's a reason for going through these these reactions, and it is, of course, to disabuse the conditioned soul of the notion that he can enjoy this way. But for someone to experience that, for example, the classic example is you'll eat anything and everything, therefore you have to go to the abode of Yamaraj and you're eating all of these horrible things, and then you get to the point where you're actually enjoying that, and then you get your body with hog body or hog-like body, so you can continue suffering in that way. So there's a kind of this is what's meant by conditioning, conditioned soul. What does that actually mean? It means that when you are subjected, when you're subjected to the controls of the lower modes of nature, or what to speak of the mode of goodness, but when you're under the control of these modes, when you're identifying with the material body, regardless of the body that you're happen to be in, you're actually in a position where you start to you make your classifications. I enjoy this, I don't enjoy that. This is good, this is bad. It's all mental concoction because it's material life. You're trying to enjoy what is asat. So regardless of the particular conditioning, the human being who's trying to enjoy in his own way, in his own apartment with his own bed and his own status of sex life and his own, preferred eatables, and the hog, in one sense, it's the same thing, but it's a different type of conditioning. That's all. So a Krishna conscious person wants to get beyond that conditioned state so that he can freely and broadly serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his original constitutional position, free from this conditioning.
You muted yourself, Panchatattva, at the end, but yes, Guru Maharaj, please.
You want to finish up, Panchatattva?
Hare Krishna?
Just your last few words were muted, but I think you were just concluding the thought, but somehow you muted on the last few words.
A call came in on my phone. I've got incoming calls muted, but still they interrupt, they interfere. It's just we want to be able to serve the Lord on the liberated platform, so that we're not encumbered by these false notions of material enjoyment and material suffering. Because as Prabhupada said about material life, we think things are good and things are bad. It's all bad.
We have the Avaranatmika Shakti at work here in these last two lines. The life is miserable, but somehow one is thinking, not so bad. Even in the ordinary materialistic life, as depicted in the Bhagavatam. The materialistic householder's life is full of so many miseries, but he gets a little something he can call pleasure, and he thinks, oh, it's not so bad. The example given in Bhagavatam is of the person who's like falling down a well, and he's hanging on to something, and there's creatures waiting to bite him below, but there's a few drops of honey that are falling on his tongue, and so he's relishing something. So we pull out some happiness, and we think, well, it's not so bad. I remember being in the first time I went to, I think it was Yugoslavia. No, it was the first time I went to Hungary during the communist times. And I was thinking, I was all undercover and so on. And I was thinking, people are so deprived in these countries. They're in so many ways. The flourishing life that I saw in Austria, the next country over, was totally absent. Instead of stores full of enjoyable things, you'd see like a dress store with one dress in the window, and that from, like in a 1940s style. So, but I saw that people were having sex, and so they were, it's okay. We have our wives, we have our children, we have our sex life, so we get on the bus, we go to work, we do everything. So this is materialistic life. Whatever its miseries, there's some compensation, and we think it's not so bad. Again, you read of concentration camps. They're living on some kind of broth, but one day they get a potato, and they're the ones who get the little piece of potato in the broth, and they think today was a good day. So this is avaranatmaka shakti, convincing us that what we have is not so bad, or even that it's enjoyable. And we see people protesting that, well, if I become a dog in my next life, what's wrong there? I'll have the consciousness of a dog, and so I'll be happy. That's avaranatmaka shakti. He's so covered that he's living as a dog, and he's thinking, it's nice.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj, and thank you, Panchatattva Prabhu. Guru Das, I saw you just lowered your hand. If you still have your comment, we're here for you.
You still have your question active after those two nice responses?
I'm happy to hear more if you have something more on the topic, please.
I feel like the speakers that preceded me covered just about everything. This adjustment to material life, as we've read in the Bhagavatam, it comes as soon as the living entity takes birth. He prays to the Lord and then gets so entangled in the pains of being so completely helpless that he forgets everything about his spiritual condition. So my only tiny thought was that for such a person who thinks he's enjoying, he has to be forcibly shown how certain behaviors bring absolute suffering, even in the so-called enjoyment, the world of enjoyment that we've put ourselves in. The sin of illicit sex brings us to the worst kind of suffering, even in that so-called enjoyment land that we've constructed for ourselves. That's all I wanted to attempt to say. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Let's jump to the comments. We have a few comments here. Saraswati Devi says, this may have been on the previous topic. I recall reading that Mahatma Gandhi drank urine, and cow's urine is auspicious. So is this an exception? I think we see in Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada points out a couple other things. Bones of an animal are impure, but we use the conch shell. So I would say summarily on the topic that yes, there are exceptions. If further comments are there, we'd love to hear them. Otherwise, next comment is, I am reminded of Indra cursed to be a hog, and he felt so happy in that body and didn't want to give up that life to go back to Indraloka. And I read in a concentration camp survivor's biography that the train that was taking them to the camp was suffocatingly overcrowded, and people knew what was in store for them, but some were still busy shamelessly engaging in sex even then. Wow. Powerful examples, both that of Indra and those in the concentration camp in sufferingly overcrowded conditions, still looking for that drop of honey. Amazing. If there are any further comments, in the meantime, Vijay Krishna Prabhu, if you would like to read text 30.
Yes, Radesh Das Prabhu, may I?
Please.
Thank you very much. You're most kind. And Maharaj, my obeisances, thank you very much for being here and having me and us, if I may say it. Evam kutumbam bibrana udarambara evavam visri jehobayam pretya bhunte tatphalam idrisham. Translation. After leaving this body, the man who maintained himself and his family members by sinful activities suffers a hellish life, and his relatives suffer also. Purport. The mistake of modern civilization is that man does not believe in the next life. But whether he believes or not, the next life is there. And one has to suffer if one does not lead a responsible life in terms of the injunctions of authoritative scriptures like the Vedas and Puranas. Species lower than human beings are not responsible for their actions because they are made to act in a certain way. But in the developed life of human consciousness, if one is not responsible for his activities, then he is sure to get a hellish life, as described here in
Did we lose our Vijay Krishna Prabhu? You have muted yourself, Prabhu.
No, I'm here.
Yes, you're back now. You were muted for just a second there. Thank you. Please keep reading if you remember where you were. Or if you're ready to comment.
Finish the purport.
Yes, please finish the purport, Prabhu.
No, he did.
Oh, he just finished. Oh, I see. Did you have comments, Vijay Krishna Prabhu? Or did you just mute yourself because you finished reading?
I mute myself because I did finish reading, but I do have a comment, if I may. But first, I would like to hear if Maharaj has anything to offer to the Sangha based on this text and purport.
I could say something, but time is short. The first point Prabhupada makes, it doesn't matter whether you believe in it or not believe in it. If we don't believe in the next life and we act irresponsibly, we'll get the consequences nonetheless. Not that if you don't believe that fire burns, you're exempt. The family members also suffer. We see that in this world, that, and Prabhupada mentions that, I think, that there's, maybe not, but if for example someone commits a murder, then the whole murderer's family is drawn into disgrace, and all sorts of sufferings take place. The murderer may be hanged, but the whole family suffers.
It's in the verse, Guru Maharaj, and his relatives suffer also.
Yeah, it's just not elaborated. So someplace Prabhupada elaborates on that, says, makes that point that
We are drawing to a close of our time. If it's all right with you, Vijay Krishna Prabhu, if you have further comments, perhaps you can join us on Monday as well. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's. What's that?
Of course, I'll do it.
Thank you, Prabhu. I did want to say this word bibrana, the one maintained. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur takes it that ubhayam refers to maintaining both the family and the stomach by sinful activities. So yeah, both of those. However, we're maintaining our lives by sinful activities. The result is suffering and hellish life. So we're gonna dodge that, and we're gonna pass the baton back to Panchatattva Prabhu. I know he passed it off at the beginning, but we've circled the track, and we're back to you, Prabhu. If you could lead our final kirtan. Take us out of hellish life. Bring us to spiritual consciousness.
I think anybody here could do a better job. Just trying to get out myself through the guidance of my spiritual master. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa, Vrivrajagacharya Astotra Sapta Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa, Vrivrajagacharya Astotra Sapta Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaura Premanande.
Thank you all so much. I'm sorry, I'm laying back because my feet are broken and I can't sit up sometimes for so long. So I'm not being informal and laying on a pillow while I greet all of you. But I'm thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you, Guru Maharaj, for attending, and thank you all for your reading and kirtans. The sangha is life. It's what allows us to avoid hellish conditions. So thank you all so much. And we'll see you Monday.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Radhesha. Thank you to all. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Yeah.
His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj Ki Jai.
Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande.
Hari Bo.
People.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Thank you, Panchatattva Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Radhesh Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Thank you all.
Maharaj, can you hear me?
Yes. Nice to
Maharaj, I just want to say this is so spontaneous. We love you very much.
Thank you, Vijay Krishna Prabhu. We
You're
love you all.
most welcome. You're most welcome.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.